the German press as a slogan. I will stop right here. She used the German word Schlagwort. This has been interpreted by some as being a slogan, but what it actually means is a concept, a key word, and therefore it does not have in any way a negative connotation. It is a factual description. It's a name. This is what she was trying to say, and we need to see what are the mechanics, what is the reality behind this. The question continues. Why does the Commission reject the idea, and how does this position square with her earlier critical statements when it comes to lack of member state solidarity, etc., etc.? Now, we have issued a statement on Saturday, as Sylvia has pointed out, and this statement puts everything in context. What the President has very clearly said is, on the one hand, we know that there is a debate between member states, and that some member states have pointed to specific constraints that they face when discussing the issue of Eurobonds, Corona bonds, etc., etc. These constraints are there, and we cannot simply wish them away. They are part of the debate. As far as she is concerned, the central, most important element of this whole debate is to ensure that we have a cohesive response to the crisis, that we do not have a response that somehow would create a divide between member states based on their capacity to deal with the effects of the crisis. And that this is the basis on which he is working, which is why the multi-annual financial framework is such a central element of the recovery plan that we will be coming forward with. Apart from that, what we are saying is that all options are on the table. We need to have options which are both quick, effective, and based on a consensus among all the actors, and in particular the member states. This is the key to having a response that will be up to the challenges which the coronavirus crisis confronts us with. So this answers these questions. Then I have a question from Jean-Pierre Strobans from Le Monde. Jacques Delors a indiqué ce week-end.
At this weekend, Jacques Delors said that the coronavirus crisis would be a death threat for the European Union if the European Union failed to show more solidarity. Many other commentators have said similar things, and they're calling for the Commission to act more and more quickly to overcome the reticences expressed by some member states. Does that mean that there should be a response from the President? Visibly, the list of decisions taken last week was masked by polemics and the failure to take decisions at the European Council. So is more vigorous action in the pipeline, and what's your response to Mr. Delors and to other commentators?
Merci pour,
Thank you for that question, Jean-Pierre. I think we've already provided some pointers by way of a response. What's true is that a number of crucial points perhaps have been rather submerged by the current debate. We shouldn't forget, and perhaps Marta will be able to revisit this, that the Commission has already over the last couple of weeks taken over 42 decisions, more than 42 decisions and sets of guidance which will allow member states to combat the effects of the crisis, and in particular that applies to the macroeconomic sphere with the triggering of the general safeguard clause in the Stability Pact. That allows member states to take various budgetary measures which will allow them, for instance, to support their health systems. And in particular, this has involved a decision to set up a temporary framework for managing state aid. This has allowed member states to notify and approve very many plans for state aid in member states at very short notice. This will be of direct benefit to companies, to workers in those companies, and that together, as Mauricio Centeno said in his declaration, these budgetary measures already represent 2% of European GDP. These measures in terms of state aid already represent 13% of the GDP of the European Union, and other plans could be presented by the member states. The Commission will look at those as soon as possible, whilst of course always bringing as much flexibility to bear as possible. Moreover, the Commission itself, with its own resources, has come up with a whole slew of proposals to allow flexible use of the European budget, in particular of the structural funds. The idea is to allow member states to reply immediately to the effects of the crisis, and in particular that involves using the Corona Response Investment Initiative. This will allow member states to mobilise 37 billion euros to respond to the crisis. So there was an immediate response on the part of the European Union institutions from the Commission and also Member States, the Council and the Parliament to approve the Commission's proposals. That will allow Member States and authorities, governments and administrations to provide immediate assistance to companies, workers, citizens and health systems. So saying that we're not acting quickly, I think, is contradictory. And then it's quite clear that we need to prepare for what happens afterwards. And as I said on Friday, this path is something we have to create, and I did actually express that in poetic terms. Caminanti non hay camino, el camino se hace andar. And what does that mean? That means that everybody has his vision of the best way of getting out of the crisis and of rejoining the road towards a healthy economy. We have to come up with a consensus, because without that consensus, we will not be able to bring the European Union out of this in a consistent and solidarity-based method. It's only normal that there should be discussions, and we have to take time for debate. We've acted immediately to allow member states to deal with the immediate effects of the crisis. We now need to work intelligently on the basis of dialogue to come up with the medium-term strategy which will allow us to as far as possible to overcome the effects of the crisis. We're in a democracy. Of course, there are debates. That's quite normal. I think that there should be debates. It's healthy that there should be debate, because it's thanks to debate that we can analyse the problems from every angle. What I would be tempted to say is that I don't really understand why we always call ourselves into question. The European Union has already been through many crises in its recent history, and in its more longer-standing history has always come out on top of these crises, and we're working to ensure that once again it comes out on top of this particular crisis, but it will be on the basis of its values. That is a set of democratic countries who are used to having discussions with each other, to dealing with problems, to contrasting different opinions, ultimately the aim being to find a way of acting together. And that's the basis on which we are working. So I'm convinced that we will get through this. The President of the European Commission and her team is playing a role in these debates. The role, first of all, is all the measures we're taking to manage the crisis. You see that here every day. And then we also have the preparation now of the relaunch plan.